Every older generation seems to look at the younger one and arrive at the exact same conclusion. They are lazy, they are entitled, or they're just inherently worse. But psychology paints a completely different picture. Successive generations are not deteriorating, and older ones are not inherently superior. Instead, the human brain simply adapts to whatever historical environment it has to survive. The era you are born into acts like an operating system. It quietly programs your mind with the precise rules and defenses required to navigate that specific moment in time. To understand why we clash so intensely today, we have to look back at the last 80 years of history. Because we are not born different, we are built by the worlds we had to endure. Take the baby boomers. They grew up in the shadow of a world war, stepping into an environment that demanded one thing above all else: physical rebuilding. Everything around them screamed stability, progress, and laying a foundational structure. Because of that environment, their brains were heavily trained on a core psychological rule: if I work hard, I will earn safety. That direct, repetitive exchange bred a deep, ingrained loyalty to systems, routines, and authority. But that exact same wiring creates a profound identity crisis later in life. When you spend decades building your entire sense of self around your utility to a system, retirement can feel like a complete erasure of who you are. Generation X had a completely contrasting childhood. They sat back and watched those trusted boomer institutions crack. They saw layoffs, rising divorce rates, and boiling frustration as the system failed to deliver on its promises. That environment hammered one brutal early lesson into the Gen X brain: no one is coming to save you. Psychologists call the result survival independence. Gen X developed extreme self-reliance, high adaptability, and a thick emotional armor to protect themselves from relying on outside help. Gen X's famous skepticism functions as a highly evolved defense mechanism, a logical response to the failing promises of their parents' era. Then come the Millennials. They were raised by parents who told them the world was fair, they were special, and they should dream big. Their early operating system was built on pure optimism. And then they graduated into the 2008 financial crash. They stepped into adulthood just in time to watch the global economy and all of those childhood promises come plummeting down. This gap represents expectation trauma, the psychological whiplash occurring when a deeply ingrained belief in a fair world collides with inescapable chaos. For many millennials, that trauma solidified into heavy blocks of burnout, pervasive imposter syndrome, and the constant feeling they are permanently falling behind. Because the 2008 crash revealed that this stable path was an illusion, millennials stopped viewing corporate loyalty as a guaranteed safety net. This disillusionment forced a psychological pivot. If the system couldn't provide security, they would prioritize work that offered personal meaning and self-expression instead. Generation Z faces a completely different landscape. They are the first demographic born into constant, unavoidable digital connection. Even in a crowded space, they are entirely enclosed inside the internet, physically isolated but virtually hyperconnected. Their brains have been wired to process extreme speed and a constant flood of information. Because they see everything, they have to feel everything, absorbing the weight of existential threats all at once. Extreme overstimulation has become their primary generational threat, closing in from all sides until it triggers digital burnout. The fierce demand for authenticity and boundaries often seen in Gen Z represents a survival strategy to gain control over relentless mental noise. And now we have Generation Alpha. They are growing up in a completely customized, AI-driven reality, shutting out the physical world around them. They are the first demographic raised by parents who already lived their own childhoods entirely online. They will navigate their lives with near total virtual control, but with severely limited physical freedom. Their ultimate psychological challenge will no longer be securing physical safety or financial stability. They will have to learn how to feel genuinely real in a world that exists almost entirely in a digital void. When you look at the complete timeline, you realize how futile those endless online generational arguments really are. We are just watching people clash over survival tactics for eras that have already ended. Your worldview, your work ethic, and your deepest anxieties are not absolute truths. They are simply the custom psychological armor forged by the exact time period of your youth. Take a look at your own operating system. Does the environment you grew up in explain the way you process the world today? Drop your generation in the comments below and let us know if your era programmed you exactly this way. And if you want to understand the unvarnished psychology behind human behavior, hit that subscribe button. We only deal in the truth.